"Mommy, we need to escape right now." Emma's small voice trembled, slicing through the pre-dawn silence of their Boston suburb home. Her 6-year-old frame stood rigid in the bedroom doorway, her wide blue eyes glistening with fear, clutching a stuffed rabbit whose ears flopped against her pajamas. Sarah Johnson jolted upright in bed, her heart thudding against her ribs. What could terrify her daughter so much? The clock glowed 5:30 a.m., its faint light casting shadows across the room. "There's no time. We have to leave the house now," Emma insisted, her voice quivering but firm, as if she carried a truth too heavy for her years. Sarah's mind raced. Was this a child's nightmare, or something real? Emma's trembling hands and moist eyes sparked a primal instinct deep within her. "All right, get dressed quick," Sarah whispered, her own hands shaking as she threw off the blankets and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. She stuffed in cash, passports, her phone, and a locket her mother had left her. A keepsake now heavy with meaning. What had Emma seen, or heard, that made her so certain their lives were in danger? The old 2-story house they called home had always held a quiet charm, its ivy-clad exterior and tall windows promising warmth and history. Inside, though, time had etched its presence. Creaking floorboards groaned in the entrance hall, faint soot clung to the fireplace bricks, and the stair railings bore worn grooves from decades of hands. These quirks had once felt precious to Sarah, tokens of a life built with care. But now, in the dim light, they seemed to whisper warnings, as if the house itself sensed a betrayal brewing. A sharp sound shattered her thoughts, the thud of footsteps on the front porch, followed by the slow, deliberate scrape of a key turning in the lock. Sarah froze, her breath catching. Was Richard back already? His business trip wasn't supposed to end until tomorrow evening. Or was it someone else entirely? "Mommy, hurry," Emma urged, her voice a desperate hiss as she tugged at Sarah's sleeve, her small body taut with urgency. What secret was driving her daughter's fear? Just hours earlier, Sarah had uncovered something chilling in Richard's study. Unable to sleep, she'd wandered into his locked office, oddly ajar tonight, and found an envelope in a drawer that shouldn't have opened. Inside was a life insurance policy in her name, its payout a staggering sum, with Richard as the sole beneficiary. The contract was dated 1 week after her mother's sudden death last year, a detail that sent a chill down her spine. Was it a precaution, or the first piece of a darker puzzle? Now, as she crouched with Emma in the shadowed hallway, voices drifted up from the living room below. Richard's voice, cold and unfamiliar, laced with a hardness she'd never heard before. "Is everything ready?" he asked, each word precise, cutting. "Understood. I'll activate it on your signal," a stranger replied, his tone calm, professional, and utterly terrifying. "Hello. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey. If you enjoy story like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world. Now let's dive into the story." Sarah's stomach lurched. What were they planning, and how long had this been in motion? Sarah grabbed Emma's hand and bolted for the back door, her bare feet slapping against the cold kitchen tiles. She twisted the knob, but it refused to budge, locked, bolted from the outside. A faint, acrid scent stung her nostrils, gasoline, sharp and unmistakable. Her pulse roared in her ears. Was this a trap? Before she could think, a deafening clatter erupted. Metal shutters slammed down over every window and door, the mechanical roar drowning out Emma's gasp. The house was sealing itself shut, transforming into a steel cage around them. They were trapped, with no way out, or so it seemed. Emma's voice cut through Sarah's rising panic, eerily steady. "Mommy, this way." She pointed to the pantry, her small finger unwavering despite the chaos. A hidden door. Sarah blinked, her mind struggling to keep up. How could Emma possibly know about such a thing? "Grandma told me in a dream," Emma said, her tone matter-of-fact as she pushed aside a shelf of canned goods to reveal a concealed handle. The panel clicked and swung open, exposing a narrow, dusty passage cloaked in darkness. Sarah's breath hitched. Her mother, gone a year now, speaking to Emma from beyond. It sounded impossible, yet Emma's certainty was unshakable, her small hands moving with purpose. They slipped into the tunnel, cobwebs brushing their faces as the air thickened with the musty scent of decades untouched. Behind them, a crackling roar erupted. Fire, hungry and fast, licking at the kitchen they'd just fled. The smell of smoke seeped into the passage, urging them forward. The tunnel sloped downward, a forgotten servant's path twisting into the unknown. Sarah's heart pounded. Would this lead them to safety, or deeper into danger? Emma pressed on, fearless, her tiny figure silhouetted against the faint light ahead. It comes out under the shed in the garden, she said, her voice calm, as if reciting a fact she'd always known. Grandma told me. Sarah swallowed her questions. How did Emma know this? Was her mother truly guiding them? And followed, crouching to fit the tight space. A loud boom echoed behind them, the fire exploding through the house, shaking the walls of the passage. They had to move faster. At last, a rusty hatch appeared, its edges glowing with faint morning light. Sarah shoved it open with a grunt, and they emerged into the cluttered underbelly of the backyard shed, surrounded by old tools and paint cans. She hoisted Emma out, then climbed up herself, her legs trembling from adrenaline. Fresh air flooded their lungs, sharp and cold, as flames devoured the house behind them. Black smoke spiraled into the dawn sky, and the distant wail of sirens began to rise, a faint promise of help. Looking back, Sarah saw their home engulfed, orange tongues of fire licking at the windows she'd cleaned just days ago. What had they escaped, and at what cost? Let's go to Barbara's, Emma said, clutching her stuffed rabbit, its once white fur now smudged with soot, her voice steady despite the horror they'd fled. They stumbled across the dew-soaked lawn to their neighbor's house 2 doors down. Sarah pounded on the door, her voice raw. Barbara, call the police. Richard tried to kill us. Barbara, still in her robe, her morning coffee steaming on the counter, opened the door and froze at the sight of them. Sarah wild-eyed, Emma soot-streaked, both trembling. Without a word, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking as she registered the black smoke rising behind them. What would the authorities uncover in the ashes? Within hours, police and firefighters swarmed the smoldering wreckage, their flashlights cutting through the haze. Sarah stood with Emma wrapped in a borrowed blanket, her accusation ringing out. Richard set the fire. He planned it all. She thrust her phone at a detective, its screen glowing with photos she'd snapped of the insurance documents in Richard's study. Tangible proof of a betrayal she could barely comprehend. The detective, a wiry man with graying hair and kind eyes, studied the images, his brow furrowing. This is serious, Mom, but it's not enough on its own. Do you have anything else? Sarah placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, and her daughter's small voice rose, clear and unwavering. Daddy was talking to Grandma on the phone. He said, if Sarah's gone, everything's mine. Then he said, the trick is to make it look like an accident. The detective knelt to Emma's level, his voice gentle. When did you hear this, little one? 3 days ago, outside Daddy's study, Emma replied, her tone precise, her gaze unflinching. He didn't see me. He was looking at old house plans and said the security system was ready. Sarah stared at her daughter, a mix of awe and heartbreak swelling in her chest. How had Emma carried such a burden without breaking? By midday, the fire's story began to take shape. Investigators found gasoline traces along the baseboards, the security system's wiring deliberately tampered with to lock the shutters remotely. Clear signs of arson, not accident. Richard's supposed business trip unraveled as a lie. His colleagues in New York had no record of any meeting. Where had he been, and why had he lied? That evening, police tracked him to a gas station 50 miles away, his car stuffed with cash, burner phones, and fake IDs. I'm innocent. My mother forced me, he shouted as they cuffed him, his charming facade crumbling under the weight of evidence. Helen Wilson, Sarah's mother-in-law, was arrested at her pristine townhouse, her composure fracturing when she learned Richard had blamed her. That ungrateful son. I sacrificed everything for him. She spat, her voice venomous. What had bound them in this horrific plan? A tangled web emerged. Richard was drowning in debt, his investment firm job a hollow front. He'd been keeping a mistress in Providence, planning a new life funded by Sarah's inheritance. Money left by her mother, which Sarah hadn't yet decided how to use. The detective explained it to Sarah later, his voice heavy. He got impatient when you didn't touch the estate. After your mother's death, it became his obsession. Days after the fire, Sarah found her mother's diary among a box of keepsakes, its pages yellowed but legible. An entry dated 2 weeks before her sudden death chilled Sarah. Richard asked about an investment, but I declined. His company's in trouble. I don't trust him. Had her mother sensed his true nature? Had she tried to warn Sarah, only to be silenced by illness, or something worse? The thought gnawed at Sarah, though she pushed it aside, unwilling to face it yet. At trial 3 months later, Emma took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted every whispered plot she'd overheard. Daddy and Grandma wanted Mommy gone. I heard them talking about the house plans and a secret passage. The prosecutor leaned in. Who told you about the passage, Emma? Mommy's mommy, she answered simply. She came to me in a dream and said Daddy was planning something bad. The jury's eyes glistened, moved by the courage of a 6-year-old who'd saved her mother's life. Richard was sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder and arson. Helen got 8 for conspiracy. Their twisted alliance, built on greed and control, lay in ruins. 6 months after the trial, Sarah stood at the window of their new home, a modest cottage in a quiet town outside Boston. Autumn leaves swirled in the garden, and the house, though smaller than their old mansion, glowed with warmth, a sanctuary for healing. Mommy, my drawing's in the art show, Emma called, bursting through the door with a sketch of 3 women. Herself, Sarah, and her grandmother, smiling under a bright sun. Sarah knelt, pulling her close. It's beautiful, Emma. Grandma would love it. Had her mother's spirit truly guided them through that night, or was it Emma's own strength shining through? I'm glad I told you to escape, Emma murmured, resting her head against Sarah's chest. Me too, Sarah whispered, their bond a fortress against the past's shadows. Sarah returned to her work as a curator at the Oliver Museum, pouring her energy into a new project, the Reverse Dream Foundation, a fund to support young female artists, using part of her mother's inheritance. Emma thrived at her new school, her resilience bolstered by their counselor, Michael Foster, who'd helped her navigate the trauma. She'd made friends and begun to sketch with a passion that mirrored Sarah's love for art. Richard, meanwhile, languished in prison, filing endless appeals and claiming, it's all a lie. Sarah and Emma made it up. But the evidence, phone records, gasoline traces, tampered systems, was ironclad. His colleagues testified to years of his deceit, painting a picture of a man unraveling long before the fire. Helen, isolated in her cell, became known as the prison's most pitiful inmate, muttering, "It was for my son," to anyone who'd listen. The trial had shattered their bond, Richard's betrayal cutting deeper than any sentence. One quiet afternoon, Sarah sorted through her mother's final belongings and found a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter, written in her mother's elegant script. Richard's not what he seems. I found out his company's failing. Be careful. It was dated 10 days before her death, a warning left too late. Sarah's hands trembled as she handed it to the police, sparking a new investigation into her mother's passing. Had it truly been natural? She tried to bury the thought, focusing on Emma instead. On Christmas Eve, snow fell softly outside as Sarah, Emma, and Michael sat by the cottage's fireplace. Michael, once their counselor, had become a steady presence. First a friend, now something warmer, undefined but growing. Emma looked up from her cocoa and asked, "Mommy, what's a real family?" Sarah paused, her heart full. It's not about blood, Emma. It's about caring for each other, protecting each other, no matter what. Emma nodded, thoughtful. That's why we're a real family now, right? Not like Daddy and Grandma. Their love wasn't good. Sarah's eyes stung as she nodded. Real love wants the best for others, not just for itself. Emma glanced at Michael, a mischievous grin spreading. Can Michael be family too? Sarah's cheeks flushed, and Michael chuckled softly. That's something we'll talk about someday, he said, his voice kind, leaving the door open. Outside, the snow blanketed the world in quiet, a promise of new beginnings. Sarah held Emma close, whispering, "Your courage gave us this life." Together, they stepped toward a future unshadowed by fear, their hearts intertwined with a love that would never falter.